Emergency was a blot on the Indian democracy, and there cannot be any uh, mm, justification for that emergency. There were a lot of excesses were there, you know. Uh, mm, Press censorship was imposed, civil liberties was curtailed. Curtailed means killed, and there was no free judiciary at that time. No civil society was there. At the same time, we have seen all the people who are now having great uh, sense for supporting anti-emergency crusade. They were all, lining up against the government in front of the government and asking mercy, from Devras to common men. And thousands of RSS and Janasangh workers were released because they gave their mafinamas.
So, sir, if you can tell us a little bit about your journey through the Indian political spectrum, since you were present at the time the emergency was imposed and you were 12 years old at the time, and your father was part of the political activism at the time. So, if you can tell us what happened during the emergency, and if you can tell us about your father's involvement.
Yes, as you know that I was born in a political family. My father, Captain Abbas Ali, he was a freedom fighter. He was in Indian National Army led by Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. And then soon after the assassination of Mahatma Gandhi, he joined Socialist Party. You can say he was one of the founder member of Congress Socialist Party. And then he was there in the various streams of Socialist Party. Socialist Party later merged with KMPP and became Praja Socialist Party. Then there was a split and it became SP. Then again SP and PSP merged and became Sanyukt Socialist Party, that is SSP. And finally the SP, which merged into Janata Party soon after the emergency was lifted in 1977. So you can say I have inherited the politics from my father, the political element in me. And my father was twice General Secretary of UP Socialist Party. And when it merged into the Janata Party, he became first president of UP Janata Party. So I have, since I was born and I came to some bit of sense, it was in me, in my gutti, that I was listening political discourse all the time, political movement. My father was very fond of going to jails. Every time, every month, there is a dharna or protest or march or something like that, satyagrah. And I was watching it keenly. In '69, he contested unsuccessfully the UP Assembly election, in which I, as a small kid, was participating. And then, after the 1971 general elections, I started reading the socialist material. There were a lot of magazines that were there, and my father used to read at least 5 or 6 newspapers a day. So I was having that kind of exposure with the journalism also. And when this and there was an election of UP Assembly in 1974. You can say that was the cutoff date of my political baptism. And then I started participating in the JP movement, what is used to be called a Sampurna Kranti movement or Bihar movement or JP movement. And saw JP first time when he came to my hometown Khurja in 1974. And when he gave the call for Delhi Chalo on 6th March 1975, I, with my father, participated in that political big rally in Delhi. And before that, there is a link to that my father was in Socialist Party, and his leader Raj Narayan contested against Indira Gandhi in Rae Bareli. So he was one of the witness in that famous case of Allahabad High Court, an election petition judgment, which was basically the reason for imposing the emergency. And on 26th June, early morning, um, emergency was declared by Indira Gandhi. My father tried to be in uh, to avoid the arrest, but he was arrested and he was put in the Bulandshahr jail. Then he was put in the Bareilly Central Jail. And then when he filed against his arrest in Allahabad High Court, his habeas corpus petition, so he was shifted to Naini Jail. So for those 19 long months, we suffered much because our relatives, close relatives, started having some distance with us because there was a danger that they might also go to jail. So, but on the other side, we were involved some kind of underground resistance movement, circulating posters and banners and all that. So this was it.
So you said that for the first 2 months you didn't know where Captain Abbas was, and so what was it like? How was he arrested? What was that day like?
You know, the instructions were given to the district magistrate that all the major political activists should be arrested of all opposition parties.
Right.
Since my father was one of the prominent leader of UP Socialist Party, so he was arrested. But his arrest was not made public. And he was charged with a case that he was trying to remove a railway track. So the trains can be derailed. And for that fake charge, he was arrested under the DIR and MISA. And you know, the censorship was imposed and there was nothing in the media. There was no way to find out where he is because he was traveling all along. So he would have been in Lucknow jail or in Aligarh jail or anywhere. But after 2 months, he sent a letter that I am in Bulandshahr jail. Then we went there, and met him there. And after that, there was much relaxation because jail authorities were also very friendly with these political prisoners, and we were allowed to take some foods, especially on Eid and Bakrid, and on Holi, Diwali, there were some celebrations. So after that, it was but first 2-3 months were very tense for us because we were not aware what is going on, where he is, what would happen to him, because at that time there was a theory that a slow poison is giving to these political prisoners, and later on we came to know that some political prisoners were killed. There was some excess especially in Bareilly jail. Their nails were snatched, by the police and all that. So it was quite a harrowing experience.
And he was at home when he was arrested? He was arrested from
No.
your house?
He was somewhere in some political rally because, at that very time, the JP movement was at its peak. And on 12th of June, Justice Jagmohan Lal Sinha pronounced this Allahabad High Court judgment. And from 12th to 25th June, there was hectic political activities going on. JP addressed a mammoth rally in Delhi's Ramlila ground, and soon after the emergency was imposed. So we were not aware where he is actually.
Right. And you and your family, who else would there be?
Yeah, me, my mother, and my 2 elder sisters. And I still remember we were at our Nana's house in a remote village in Aligarh district. And when we came to know that emergency has imposed and all the leaders have been arrested, so we rushed to our own house in Bulandshahr district. And then we started searching for our father.
Yeah. So what was the mood like 19 months later when he was released, and the emergency also was over after that? So what was the aftermath of the emergency like for political leaders like your father?
Oh, it was jubilant atmosphere, in North India especially, and we were celebrating it that black era has ended when Mrs. Gandhi announced the elections. I think it was Kumbh Mela in Allahabad, where she announced in a public rally. And after that, she started releasing political leaders. So on 18th January, she announced, and on 23rd January 1977, Janata Party was announced. And there was no structure and nothing. There was no flag of the party, no symbol. They contested on the symbol of Lokdal. And later on, after 3 months of forming the government, they formed the Janata Party. So the Lok Sabha election started. My father was offered a Lok Sabha ticket, which he refused, that I am not in a position to contest elections economically, because for 19 months we were almost bankrupt. But he actively participated for the Janata Party candidates, conversing and all that. And soon after that formation of Janata government dismissed 9 state assemblies. So there were assembly elections in UP in June. At that time, my father asked for the ticket, but he was refused by the party, because so many groups, were fighting for their own candidates, and there was Jana Sanghas, Congress, Bharatiya Lokdal, Jagjeevan Ram's Congress, and Socialist Party. But soon after that, assembly elections, which was again a success, big success in UP, Bihar, and whole of North India, my father was appointed president of UP Janata Party. So we have forgotten what happened during the emergency.
So over the years, do you think that political leaders who were involved at the time, especially with the socialist movement, and especially in this whole anti-emergency kind of movement that rose at the time, do you think that there has been a little bit of disillusionment in those people who supported at least the politics of that time? Do you think that there has been a disillusionment in those people in the last 25 years, since 50 years since the emergency? I mean, were the things that the movement set out to do, were they achieved?
Frankly speaking, this politics of non-Congressism, on which my guru Madhulimaya has written a book, Politics of Non-Congressism, that was suicidal for the socialist movement. Because till that strategy, what they call it, started, people in socialist movement were very committed, honest, and they were not power-hungry people. They were not aiming to become MP or MLA or ministers or to get power. They were the kind of people that, look, we are the vigilant of the society in the opposition party, and we as a what you call a watchdog of the democracy. And they have their own policies, ideologies, principles, which were compromised. And it turned into an exercise to grab power. That was the calamity of the socialist movement. In 67, they got power in 4 or 5 states in UP, Bihar, Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, and maybe in some 2 or 3 other states. And soon after, most of the people that now enough is enough, we are not going to starve, and now we should grab the power and enjoy the fruits of it. So this kind of politics, if it could be restricted to only to power grabbing, I could have understand it. But they compromised the basic ideology, which was the alliance with the RSS. And that was the turning point. And RSS and BJP, in previous avatar, Bharatiya Janata Party, they were untouchable to any political party. Is there any problem with it? Some noise? Politics, of non-Congressism paved the way to end the untouchability of RSS, and they became mainstream
Yeah.
Political party. And then what happened in the first place, when they joined government in 67 and in 77, they were very subdued. And they never fight for their own ideology. They merged into Janata Party and ended their identity, adopted the socialist policies of Janata Party. But when Janata Party was, split on the issue of RSS, on the dual membership, then they formed the Bharatiya Janata Party again. And for next 2 years, when Vajpayee was president, they are saying that they are the Gandhian socialist initially. And when Advani took over, after 84, when they were reduced only on 2 seats, then again they started their propaganda, and they came into their true colors. They started Ram Mandir and all the majoritarian communal politics, which is now dominating the Indian scene.
Yeah.
And RSS was always supported. On the other hand, opposition also compromised with them. Sometime they took support of other opposition parties. Sometime opposition party took support of them. They formed the government in Haryana when Devi Lal won the election in 87. And in some other election also, they were having some kind of give and take politics. So, and after the split of Janata Party, you cannot say that there is any socialist party in this country which has its own ideology, its own principles, own program.
So, if you can tell me, since you as well as your father were closely have seen the emergency era and the excesses that happened at the time, be it in terms of press freedom, be it in terms of political freedom. Now, do you think the freedoms that were won back at the time, at the end of the emergency, do you think that they have, they are the same freedoms that were won back at the time? I mean, what is the legacy of the emergency, do you think? In terms of
emergency
politics?
was a blot on the Indian democracy, and there cannot be any justification for that emergency. There were a lot of excesses were there, press censorship was imposed, civil liberties was curtailed. Curtailed means killed, and there was no free judiciary at that time. No civil society was there, and everything was, it's like a country with a true dictatorship. Mrs. Gandhi used to call herself a Democrat. She was running parliament also at that time, but it was not a democracy anymore. I mean, if you assess this last 75 years of Indian democracy, that was the only era, the only chapter, which is, you cannot call that India was under democracy. And, but we are, at the same time, we have seen all the people who are now having great sense for supporting anti-emergency crusade. They were all, lining up against the government, in front of the government, and asking mercy, from Devras to common men. And thousands of RSS and Janasangh workers were released because they gave their mafinamas. They tender apologies that we will support this government. Even Devras said this. So they have no right to say that they were opposing emergency. And now what they are doing it is worse than emergency. Because at that time, no one was killed on the name of caste, color, creed, and religion. There was no lynching there. There was no hate speech there. I mean, although the country was under threat, but there was harmony among the people. There was no major communal riot at that time. And soon after the emergency, these RSS people started communal riots. The Aligarh and Jamshedpur, the worst hit communal riots, were one of the reasons of breaking of Janata Party government. It has been said in the parliament. And then they started their own ideology. They started having the parallel system of party. The youth wing of Janata Party was Yuva Janata, but RSS people started their own Janata Yuva Morcha. Subramaniam Swamy was its president, and they are having their parallel offices. That's why Madhulime raised this issue of dual membership. And when there was no hearing in Janata Party High Command about this issue, so he held a press conference and said that making of the Janata Party was a historical necessity. Now the breaking of the Janata Party is a historical necessity. And he broke the Janata Party. So they cannot claim that they are the champion of civil liberties. Since when they can talk about human rights and civil liberties when they are making hate speeches? You know, during the last parliamentary election, our Prime Minister was making hate speeches. I went to the police station and later to a court to lodge a FIR against him. Mrs. Gandhi was not doing this at that time. Her follies cannot be pardoned. Her son Sanjay Gandhi's excess cannot be pardoned. It should be remain there. But emergency is no comparison with present day's circumstances or atmospheres.
In terms of like when the emergency happened, there was a very strong opposition, which was all, of course, a lot of them were in jail, but like you said, the underground movement of resistance continued. For instance, I think at that time, fighting the emergency became one dominant ideology what everybody came under, right? So is there something today that unites leaders?
Unfortunately not. Most of the political parties, including our left parties, are carried away by RSS propaganda. You know, when Article 370 was scrapped, there was no hue and cry. Article 370 was not a Hindu-Muslim question.
Yeah.
It was a faith in our constitution, what we have promised to the people of Kashmir, and which was, was there for so long. When there was a judgment, I don't know what kind of judgment that was, about Ayodhya by the Supreme Court. Some people say it was a panchayati faisla. And everybody was so cool. Everybody accepted it. Then why there was so much of hue and cry? And I'm afraid if something what happened in Ayodhya happened in Kashi or Mathura, will any political party will stand? I don't see any political party or a big group of civil society to protest against it. Now there is a feeling in this country, whatever that majoritarian communal agenda is going on, that this is the nationalism. So if this is the case, you cannot call this country a true secular, democratic, socialist country. The current dispensation is having, in last Lok Sabha, 300 MPs in Lok Sabha and 100 MPs in Rajya Sabha. There was not a single Muslim. There was not a single Christian. There was one Sikh by default. Can you call it participatory democracy or inclusive democracy? I'm afraid you cannot. So if we are going in this way, now in every state assembly elections, we are not giving tickets to the Muslim because BJP will encash it. This is your commitment. This is not the party of Gandhi, Nehru, Maulana Azad and Sardar Patel. If you always in fear mongering or in this kind of situation, how you will fight with these fanatics, with the communal elements. The RSS, which is going to celebrate its 100 years next year, never participated in the freedom movement. In the ideology of freedom movement, they never accepted it. They never accepted the existence of our Indian constitution. Uh, just for the sake of running the government, they are using it, rather usurping the constitution. But and they have turned this country into a de facto Hindu nation. So now this country has to decide which way they would go.
If there is any one, lessons that you would say that politicians today can learn from the emergency era and the leaders of that time, what would you say that would be?
Every political party and every political activist, first of all, should commit to the inheritance of independence. What was the ideology of our national movement and what we have inherited? We have inherited Indian constitution from that ideology. So those who are opposed to national movement, those who are opposed to that constitutional making policy, cannot be true Indians. And this is the prerequisite to be a nationalist Indian, to believe in letter and spirit in that constitution. That constitution was framed by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He was not a congressman. He was never been in Congress party. But he took all the essence of the party's manifestos, resolutions passed during the national movement. So first of all, we have to believe in Gandhi, his politics, and what he gave to India, that is Indian Constitution. And our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, has proved it for more than 17 years. Then this country can only be governed and run by a secular democratic society. No other way.